Far away from Earth, beyond the systems most people had ever heard of, there was a small human colony built on a quiet and beautiful planet. The planet did not have a real blue sky like Earth, so the settlers created one using advanced technology. Giant atmospheric domes stretched over the land, projecting soft blue light during the day, and a sky full of stars at night. It wasn't perfect, but for the people living there, it felt close enough to home. This colony was not like the military outposts or mining stations scattered across space. It was different. It was peaceful. The people who came here were not soldiers or explorers looking for danger. They were families, workers, teachers, and children. They were people who had seen too much war in the past and wanted a fresh start. They believed this place would give them that chance. Every morning, the colony slowly came to life. Lights turned on inside small, neatly built homes. Doors opened as people stepped out to begin their day. Some went to work in the hydroponic farms, growing fresh food inside long glass structures filled with green plants. Others worked in maintenance, making sure the life support system stayed stable. There were engineers, doctors, and simple laborers, all working together to keep the colony running. Children were everywhere. They ran through the open paths between buildings, laughing and playing games. Some of them had never even seen Earth with their own eyes. To them, this colony was home. The artificial sky above them was real enough. The quiet streets, the familiar faces, the sense of safety, it was all they knew. At the center of the colony stood a large building that served as a meeting hall. It was where announcements were made, where people gathered during important moments, and where the colony leader often spoke. He was not a military man. He was calm, thoughtful, and believed deeply in the idea that humanity could change. He often reminded the people why they had come here. "We didn't come here to fight," he would say. "We came here to live." And the people believed him. The colony did have some defenses, but they were small and basic. A few orbital sensors watched the space around the planet. There were automated drones that could respond to minor threats like meteors or unknown debris. But there were no heavy weapons, no warships stationed nearby, and no trained army ready for battle. It was a choice they had made together. They didn't want to live in fear anymore. Over time, that choice turned into confidence. Weeks turned into months, and months turned into years. Nothing ever happened. No enemies appeared. No danger came close. The sensors always showed empty space. The silence of the universe made them feel even safer. People stopped worrying. Some of the security systems were checked less often. A few even joked that the defenses were pointless. Life became routine, peaceful, predictable. In the evenings, families gathered outside their homes. Some shared meals under the soft glow of the artificial sky. Others told stories, played music, or simply sat together in silence, enjoying the calm. The colony felt alive, but in a gentle way. There was no rush, no fear, no urgency. It felt like they had finally escaped everything that once threatened them. But far beyond what their sensors could detect, something was moving. Deep in the darkness of space, hidden from their limited technology, a group of alien ships drifted closer. They were silent, cold, and precise. These ships were not explorers. They were not curious travelers. They were built for one purpose: to find, to judge, and to destroy. The colony had no idea. Back on the planet, everything continued as normal. A young boy chased a small robotic pet across the street, laughing as it beeped and tried to escape. A woman adjusted the settings of a farm unit, making sure the plants received the right amount of light. Two workers argued lightly over a broken system, both smiling as they tried to fix it. It was an ordinary day. And that was the problem, because no one was looking up. No one noticed the faint distortion in space, far above the planet's orbit. No one saw the brief flicker as something massive passed through a hidden layer of cloaking technology. The colony's sensors didn't react. They were not designed to detect something so advanced, something so far beyond what they had ever faced. Inside the meeting hall, the colony leader prepared for another small speech. It wasn't anything important, just a regular update to keep everyone informed and connected. He looked over his notes, then out the window at the peaceful streets below. For a moment, he smiled. This was what he had hoped for, a place where people could live without fear. A place where children could grow up without hearing the sounds of war. But even he didn't realize how fragile that peace really was. High above, the alien ships moved into position. They surrounded the planet slowly, carefully, making sure not to alert any early warning systems. Their technology allowed them to remain invisible, almost like ghosts in space. From their perspective, the human colony below was small, weak, and completely unprepared. There was no hesitation, no discussion. To them, this was not a battle. It was a simple task. Back on the ground, the colony continued its quiet life. A group of children sat together, drawing pictures of stars and planets, imagining what other worlds might look like. One of them drew a picture of a spaceship, large and powerful, protecting their home. The others laughed and said they didn't need protection. They believed nothing would ever come for them. And maybe that belief was the most dangerous thing of all. As the artificial sun began to set, the sky slowly shifted into soft shades of orange and purple. Lights across the colony turned on, casting a warm glow over the buildings. People started heading home, ending another peaceful day. From the surface, everything looked perfect, but above them, hidden in the darkness, destruction was already waiting. The alien fleet had finished its approach. Their weapons powered silently, charging with cold, efficient energy. The colony's sensors remained quiet. No alarms, no warnings, just silence. And in that silence, the fate of the entire colony was already sealed. The evening had settled gently over the colony, just like it always did. The artificial sky shifted into deep shades of purple and dark blue, and small lights began to glow across the streets. Families were inside their homes, finishing meals, talking about their day, or preparing to rest. It felt calm, safe, normal. No one knew that high above them, hidden in the darkness of space, massive alien ships had already surrounded the planet. For a few quiet moments, everything remained still. Then it happened. Without warning, a sudden flash of light tore across the sky. At first, some people thought it was a glitch in the artificial system. A few stepped outside their homes, looking up in confusion. The sky flickered again, this time brighter, sharper. And then came a sound that no one in the colony had ever heard before. A deep, distant roar, like the sky itself was breaking apart. Within seconds, the first energy beam struck. It came down from orbit with terrifying speed, hitting the outer edge of the colony. The ground shook violently as buildings were torn apart in an instant. Fire exploded outward, sending debris flying in every direction. The peaceful silence was gone, replaced by chaos. People froze. For a moment, no one understood what was happening. Then the second strike hit, this time closer to the center. Homes that had been standing just seconds ago were gone, replaced by flames and smoke. The force of the impact knocked people to the ground. Windows shattered, lights flickered, the entire colony began to tremble. And then the screaming started. Panic spread faster than the destruction itself. People ran out of their homes, looking for answers, looking for safety, but there was nowhere to go. The sky above them lit up again as more beams rained down, each one destroying another part of the colony. The attack was precise, controlled, relentless. Inside the meeting hall, the colony leader stumbled as the building shook. Alarms finally began to sound, echoing loudly through the structure. He rushed to the main console, trying to understand what was happening. The system screens flickered, struggling to keep up. Unknown ships detected, the system repeated. But it was already too late. The colony's defensive systems activated, but they were weak. A few automated drones launched into the sky, firing small bursts of energy toward the unseen enemy. It did nothing. The beams from orbit continued without slowing, cutting through the colony like it wasn't even there. In the streets, people were running in every direction. A mother held her child tightly as she tried to reach a nearby shelter. Around her, buildings collapsed, sending dust and fire into the air. A man tried to help someone trapped under debris, pulling with all his strength as another explosion shook the ground beneath him. Nothing made sense. There had been no warning, no signal, no chance to prepare. Above them, the alien fleet watched in silence. Their ships remained steady, perfectly aligned in orbit. From their perspective, this was nothing more than a task being completed. There was no emotion, no hesitation, just destruction. Back on the ground, the colony was falling apart. The hydroponic farms, once filled with green life, were now burning. The glass structures shattered under the force of nearby impacts. Fire spread quickly, feeding on everything it could. Smoke filled the air, making it harder to breathe, harder to see. The artificial sky began to glitch again, flickering wildly as systems started to fail. For a moment, the peaceful illusion disappeared completely, revealing the dark emptiness of space above and the faint outlines of massive ships hovering there. Some people saw them, and in that moment, they understood. This wasn't an accident. This was an attack. Fear turned into pure terror. The shelters that existed were not designed for something like this. They were small, limited, and already overcrowded. People pushed inside, desperate for safety, but even underground, the ground continued to shake. Dust fell from the ceilings. Lights flickered on and off. Every second felt like the end. Outside, the destruction continued without pause. Entire sections of the colony were gone now, replaced by burning ruins. The carefully built homes, the streets, the places where people had laughed and lived, it was all disappearing. A young boy stood frozen in the middle of the street, staring at the sky. His small robotic pet lay broken beside him. He didn't move. He couldn't understand what was happening. Just hours ago, everything had been normal. Now, everything was gone. A nearby explosion threw him to the ground, snapping him back to reality. Someone rushed forward, grabbing him and pulling him toward cover just as another beam struck behind them. There was no time to think, only to survive. Inside the meeting hall, the colony leader tried to send a distress signal. His hands moved quickly across the controls, but the system kept failing. Interference from above was blocking most communications. He managed to send a broken message into deep space, hoping someone, somewhere, would receive it. But even as he did, he knew help would not come in time. The attacks didn't slow down. They became more intense, more focused. It was as if the alien fleet had already calculated exactly how to destroy everything as quickly as possible. Power stations were targeted. Communication towers were eliminated. Any structure that could support survival was erased. The colony wasn't being attacked randomly. It was being erased. Minutes felt like hours as the destruction continued. The sound of explosions became constant, blending into a single terrifying noise that filled the air. The ground no longer felt stable. Fires burned out of control. Smoke covered everything. And still, no one fought back, because there was nothing to fight with. Eventually, the attacks began to slow, not because the colony resisted, but because there was almost nothing left to destroy. The alien ships remained in orbit for a few final moments, scanning the surface. Any remaining signs of activity were quickly eliminated with precise strikes. Small pockets of survivors were gone within seconds. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the ships began to leave. No message, no explanation, no reason given. They simply turned and disappeared back into the darkness of space. Below them, the colony burned. What had once been a place of hope, peace, and new beginnings was now silent. The artificial sky failed completely, leaving only darkness above. Fires continued to burn through the ruins, casting a faint, flickering glow over what remained. The laughter was gone. The voices were gone. Everything was gone. In less than an hour, an entire human colony had been wiped out, and the universe remained silent. Far away from the destroyed colony, deep in the cold silence of space, a single human ship moved slowly through the darkness. It was not a warship. It carried no heavy weapons, no large crew, and no power to fight a fleet. It was a reconnaissance vessel, designed only to observe, scan, and report back to command. Inside the ship, everything was quiet, except for the soft hum of its systems. Lights glowed gently across the control panels. Screens displayed endless streams of data, coordinates, sensor readings, and distant signals from nearby space. The captain sat alone in the command seat. He had been on long missions before, days, sometimes weeks, without seeing another human face. It was part of the job. Quiet, patient, uneventful. Most of the time, nothing happened. This mission was supposed to be the same, but then the signal came. At first, it was weak, almost nothing. Just a broken transmission buried under static. The system picked it up automatically, flagging it as a distress signal. The captain leaned forward, focusing on the screen as the audio tried to clean itself. There were voices. Faint. Panicked. Then came the sound of something else. Explosions, alarms, people screaming. The captain's expression changed instantly. His hands moved quickly across the controls, boosting the signal, trying to stabilize it. The ship's system struggled to reconstruct the message, but piece by piece, it became clearer. Under attack. Unknown ships. We need. The message cut out. For a second, there was nothing. just silence. The captain stared at the screen, his heartbeat rising. He immediately checked the coordinates attached to the signal. His eyes widened slightly. It was the colony. Without wasting a second, he redirected the ship toward the source. Engines adjusted course, pushing forward at maximum safe speed. The ship wasn't built for rapid response, but it was all he had. As the ship moved closer, more fragments of the signal came through. Short bursts of audio, broken images, glimpses of chaos. He saw fire, buildings collapsing, people running. Each frame lasted only a second before cutting out again. But it was enough. He knew what was happening. And he knew he was already too late. The ship dropped out of faster travel near the edge of the system. The captain immediately ran a wide scan of the area. The results came back quickly, and they were worse than he expected. Multiple large objects had been present in orbit. Unknown design, unknown origin, but they were gone. Only faint energy signatures remained, slowly fading into the background. The captain didn't follow them. Instead, he looked down, at the planet. From space, the damage was visible even from a distance. Bright scars of fire spread across the surface. Large sections of land were still burning. The artificial atmosphere around the colony flickered weakly, barely holding together. He moved the ship closer. Closer than protocol allowed. Closer than safety recommended. As the ship entered low orbit, the sensors began to pick up more detail. The readings were unstable. Heat levels were high. Structural damage was everywhere. There were no signs of organized activity, no clear signals of survivors. Still, he kept scanning. Inside the ship, the only sound was his breathing and the constant stream of data. His eyes moved across the screens, searching for anything, any sign that someone had made it. Then another transmission came through, even weaker than before. Barely there. He froze. Slowly, carefully, he isolated the signal and amplified it. The audio crackled, filled with static. It was almost impossible to understand. But then, a voice. Anyone. Please. It was faint, broken, but it was human. The captain immediately locked onto the signal's location. It was coming from the surface, somewhere deep within the ruins of the colony. He adjusted the ship's position, focusing all sensors on that area. Hold on, he whispered under his breath, even though the person couldn't hear him. The ship scanned again and again, but the signal began to fade. Stay with me, he said, his voice tense now. The system tried to maintain the connection, but whatever device was sending the signal was failing. The audio broke apart into fragments, each one weaker than the last. So cold. Static. Don't. Silence. The signal was gone. The captain didn't move. He just sat there, staring at the screen. For a long moment, he said nothing. His hands rested on the controls, but they didn't move. The ship continued to hover above the burning ruins, its sensors sweeping the surface over and over again. No more signals came, no movement, no life. Just fire and silence. He leaned back slowly in his seat, his jaw tightening. His eyes stayed fixed on the planet below, taking in the full reality of what had happened. An entire colony, gone. Not a battle, not a war, just destruction. He replayed the earlier transmission, watching the broken footage again. The screams, the explosions, the fear. He saw the moment everything ended. And this time, he didn't look away. A notification appeared on the console, standard protocol instructions from command. The system had already prepared the next steps. Observe, record, return, do not engage. He read the instructions without reacting. It was the correct procedure. The logical one. His ship wasn't built for combat. Even if he had arrived earlier, there was nothing he could have done against a fleet like that. He knew that. But knowing it didn't change what he felt. His gaze shifted back to the planet, to what was left of the colony. This place had been peaceful, civilian, defenseless, and someone had chosen to destroy it anyway. The captain's hand slowly moved toward the communication panel. He opened a channel to command, preparing to send the full report. All the data had already been collected. All he had to do was transmit it and then leave. His finger hovered over the control. For a few seconds, he didn't press it. Instead, he looked again at the recordings, at the final moments of the colony, at the people who had no chance, no warning, no way to fight back. Then he closed the channel. The system paused, waiting for confirmation. It didn't come. He turned off long-range communication completely. The ship went quiet again. No connection to command. No orders. No instructions. Just him and the empty silence of space. Slowly, he adjusted the ship's sensors, redirecting them away from the planet and toward deep space, toward the fading trail left behind by the alien fleet. There was still a trace. Weak, but not gone. His eyes focused, sharper now. This wasn't part of the mission anymore. It wasn't protocol. It wasn't even logical. But none of that mattered now. Without saying a word, he set a new course. The ship's engines powered up, turning slowly in the direction of the unknown. Behind him, the destroyed colony burned quietly in the darkness. Ahead of him, something else was waiting. Inside the ship, everything felt different now. The silence was still there, the same calm hum of systems running in the background, the same soft glow of control panels lighting up the cockpit. But for the captain, nothing felt normal anymore. The ship was the same, but his mind was not. He was still officially on a reconnaissance mission. That was what command had assigned him. Observe, record, return. That was all. No engagement, no interference, no action beyond reporting what he saw. But what he had seen changed everything. A peaceful human colony destroyed in less than an hour. Families, children, entire lives erased without warning. And the worst part was not just the destruction. It was how easily it was done. No chance to defend, no chance to escape, just total controlled annihilation. He kept replaying it in his mind, again and again. The broken messages, the fire, the silence after the last signal died. It stayed with him like a weight he could not remove. Command had told him to report and return. But when he opened the communication channel, his hand stopped. For a moment, he just stared at the blinking cursor on the screen. All he had to do was send the data. That was it. Then he could turn the ship around, follow orders, and leave everything behind. But something inside him refused. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the dark view of space outside the cockpit window. The stars were cold and distant, the same stars he had seen his entire life. But now they felt different, empty, indifferent. He thought about the colony again. They had trusted the galaxy. They had believed they were safe, and they were wrong. His fingers slowly moved away from the console. The decision was not loud or dramatic. There was no sudden moment of rage or panic. It was quiet, simple, a choice made in silence. He closed the communication channel. The system paused, waiting for confirmation. He confirmed it. And just like that, the ship was cut off from command. No more updates. No more instructions. No distant voices from Earth or fleet control. Only the quiet isolation of deep space. The captain exhaled slowly. It wasn't relief. It wasn't fear either. It was something in between. A heavy acceptance of what he had just done. Now he was alone. Truly alone. But he was not thinking about going back. Instead, he opened the ship's long-range tracking systems again. The faint trail left by the alien fleet was still there, barely detectable. A distortion in space, like a shadow that refused to disappear completely. It was moving away from the system. Fast. The ship's AI analyzed the data and displayed the estimated direction of travel. The fleet was not staying. They had completed their attack and were already leaving. The captain watched the projections silently. They had destroyed an entire colony and were simply moving on, as if it meant nothing. Something inside him tightened. He looked at the numbers again, the energy readings, the formation pattern, the timing of the attack. Everything was precise, controlled, efficient. This was not random violence. It was planned. That made it worse. Because it meant they would do it again. Somewhere else, another colony, another world. And no one would stop them. At least, not yet. He leaned forward again, placing both hands on the controls. The ship responded instantly, waiting for direction. Its systems were still fully functional. Weapons were limited, but its engines and stealth capabilities were strong. It was not designed for war, but it was not helpless either. The captain hesitated for only a moment. Then he made another decision. He locked onto the direction of the alien fleet, and he followed. The ship changed course smoothly, drifting into the dark path left behind by the attackers. It was not fast enough to catch them immediately, but it could track them, stay behind them, observe their movement. At least that was what it should have been doing. But this time, observation was not the goal. As the ship moved through space, the captain studied everything he could about the fleet's trail. Energy residue, warp signatures, movement patterns. He rebuilt the path they had taken, step by step. His training told him how to analyze, how to understand, how to report. But now he was using that knowledge differently. He wasn't just watching anymore. He was learning. The alien fleet had advantages, numbers, firepower, technology beyond anything he had seen before. But they also had patterns, habits, predictable behaviors. No system, no matter how advanced, was truly without weakness. The captain began to notice small things. The fleet moved in tight formation during attacks, but spread out when traveling. Their energy use spiked after destruction events, likely due to shielding or weapon cooldown. Their movements were fast, but not flexible. They relied on structure, discipline, confidence, too much confidence. He stored every detail, every weakness, every pattern. Hours passed like that. The ship drifted silently through space, following a trail that was slowly fading. The captain barely moved from his seat. He was focused completely now, like something had shifted inside him. The grief was still there, but it had changed shape. It was no longer just pain. It was direction. At one point, the AI suggested returning to safe distance. It flagged the situation as high risk. It recommended disengagement. The captain ignored it. He manually disabled advisory alerts. The ship remained quiet again. Only the hum of engines and the soft glow of data filled the cockpit. Far ahead, the alien fleet was still out of reach, but now he knew where they were going. Or at least where they were headed next based on their trajectory. A new target system, another place, another chance for destruction. He stared at the data for a long time. Then he spoke quietly, almost to himself. They won't stop. It wasn't a question. It was a realization. And in that moment, something settled inside him completely. He was no longer just a reconnaissance officer. He was no longer following orders. He was the only human ship close enough to even try to understand what had happened. And understanding was no longer enough. The captain adjusted the ship's systems one more time. Power distribution changed. Sensors recalibrated. Stealth mode reinforced. Everything was being prepared not for escape, but for something else. The ship was still small, still alone, still outmatched. But now it had direction. Behind him, the destroyed colony was already far away, fading into the darkness of space. Ahead of him, the trail continued. And for the first time since the attack, he did not turn back. The ship moved slowly through the dark space, following the faint trail left behind by the alien fleet. Everything outside the cockpit was silent. No planets nearby, no friendly signals, just endless stars and empty darkness stretching in every direction. Inside the ship, the captain worked in complete focus. He was no longer just reacting to what had happened. Now he was studying it. Carefully, quietly, like someone trying to understand a disaster by looking at every small detail left behind. The alien fleet was ahead, but not far enough to disappear completely. Their energy signatures were still visible, though weak and fading. Most ships in space left some kind of trace, especially after a large attack. And this fleet had done something big. That made their trail easier to follow than they probably expected. The captain locked all available systems onto that trail. Every sensor the ship had was now focused on one thing, tracking the movement of those ships. He didn't speak. He didn't move much. He just watched data appear on the screen and slowly started building a picture in his mind. At first, it looked simple, a straight path forward, leaving the destroyed colony behind. But as he studied it more, he began to notice patterns. The fleet was not just moving randomly. Their movement had structure, predictable structure. They were not rushing in panic. They were not scattered. They were organized. That told him something important. They were not afraid. They did not think anything was chasing them. The captain leaned forward slightly. His eyes stayed fixed on the data streams. He began replaying everything he knew about the attack, the timing, the speed, the precision, the way the colony had been destroyed without hesitation. It was too clean, too controlled. This was not a chaotic war. This was not two equal sides fighting. This was something else, something much more one-sided. He opened the recorded data from the colony attack again. The broken signals, the visual fragments, the short flashes of destruction. He watched carefully this time, not as someone shocked by what he saw, but as someone trying to understand how it was done. He noticed something important. The alien fleet did not waste energy. Every strike had a purpose. Every beam was placed with precision. They did not fire randomly. They were efficient. Almost clinical in the way they destroyed the colony. That efficiency meant experience. This was not their first attack. The captain felt a slow, cold realization forming in his mind. If they had done this before, then the colony was not the only one. He checked historical data, deep space reports, missing colony records, unexplained communication losses from other systems. Most of it was scattered, unconfirmed, or ignored as system failures or natural disasters. But now, when he compared the patterns, something began to connect. A few colonies went silent at similar times, similar distances, similar types of unexplained energy spikes before contact was lost. At the time, it had been treated as coincidence. Now it looked different. It looked like a pattern. The captain sat back for a moment, letting the information settle. His ship floated quietly through space, still following the alien trail. Outside, nothing changed. Stars moved slowly in the distance. Time felt stretched and unreal. He wasn't thinking about command anymore. He wasn't thinking about orders. He was thinking about understanding the enemy. He zoomed in on the fleet's movement again. This time, he started mapping their route more carefully. Where they came from, where they were heading. He overlaid it with known human settlements, colonies, and exploration zones. The picture became clearer. The fleet was not random. They were moving along a path that intersected multiple human-controlled regions. Not directly at first, but close enough, testing boundaries, striking isolated targets, then moving again, like they were mapping humanity's presence slowly, one destruction at a time. The captain's hands tightened slightly on the armrest of his chair. He was not just tracking attackers anymore. He was watching a system, a method, a strategy. He began to understand something deeper. This was not a single act of violence. This was an operation. The ship's AI suggested caution. It warned about entering deeper pursuit without backup. It calculated risk levels. It showed probabilities of survival if contact was made with the alien fleet. The numbers were not good. The captain ignored it again. Instead, he focused on something else. He started analyzing their communication patterns. Even without direct signals, every fleet left behind indirect traces. Energy bursts during coordination, slight timing differences between ships, movement synchronization. He noticed that the alien ships moved almost like a single unit. Not independent vessels, but parts of a larger system. That meant coordination, and coordination meant structure. Structure meant leadership. There was something controlling them, or at least organizing them. He marked that in his mind. Find the center. Find the control point. The idea formed slowly but firmly. If you want to understand a system, you don't just follow the edges. You follow the flow back to its source. He adjusted the ship's sensors again, increasing the sensitivity to detect deeper energy fluctuations. The system responded by expanding its range, searching further into space for any sign of the fleet's core movement. Hours passed, then more hours. Space gave no answers quickly. Everything was slow. Everything was distant. But the captain waited. He had nothing else to do now except follow and learn. Eventually, something appeared. A stronger energy trace. Not from the attack itself, but from a coordinated jump, a point where multiple ships had synchronized movement at once. That moment was important. He marked it. It suggested regrouping, a meeting point, possibly a staging area. The captain leaned in closer. For the first time since the attack, there was something new. Not destruction, not silence, but direction. He followed that trace carefully, adjusting the ship's course slightly. Not too fast, not too obvious. Still careful, still hidden. The ship remained in stealth mode, blending into the darkness of space. As he followed, more patterns began to appear. The fleet was not just moving away, it was returning to something. A base point. A central location where they regrouped after operations. The captain didn't know what he would find there. But he knew one thing clearly now. These aliens were not just invaders passing through. They were organized, experienced, and likely responsible for more than just one destroyed colony. As the ship moved deeper into unknown space, the captain stayed silent. His focus was absolute. Every detail mattered now. Every trace could lead to understanding. Behind him, the human colony was gone. Ahead of him, something much larger was waiting. And for the first time, he was not just following revenge. He was following knowledge that could change everything. The ship moved quietly through deep space, staying far behind the alien fleet. The captain had learned enough by now to know that rushing was not an option. These enemies were organized, disciplined, and far more advanced than anything humanity had faced before. A direct fight would mean instant destruction. So instead, he watched, and he learned. By now, he had spent many hours studying their movement patterns, their energy signatures, and the way they operated as a group. The alien fleet moved like a single organism, but even organisms have weak points. No system is perfect, and the captain had started to see cracks in their perfection. But seeing weakness was not enough. He needed a moment, a chance, something small that could be used without being noticed. That moment came sooner than expected. The alien fleet had slowed down near a quiet region of space. It was not a planet or a colony, just an empty area with scattered asteroid fields and weak gravitational disturbances. At first, it seemed like a resting point, a place to regroup after their attack. But the captain noticed something else. The fleet was not fully alert. Their formation had loosened slightly. Some ships had drifted farther apart than before. Their scanning activity was reduced. Their focus had shifted inward toward regrouping and system checks after the destruction of the colony. It was a rare opening, a mistake, or maybe just overconfidence. The captain stared at the data for a long time. His ship hovered silently at a safe distance, hidden in the darkness. He knew this was dangerous. One wrong move would expose him completely. The alien fleet would detect him instantly if he made a mistake. But he also knew something else. If he did nothing, they would continue. More colonies, more lives, more destruction, and no one would stop them. He leaned forward slowly. His fingers moved over the controls. The ship's systems responded immediately, waiting for a command. Weapon systems were limited, but the ship still carried precision tools designed for emergency defense and small-scale disruption. Not enough for war, but enough for something smaller. The captain didn't aim for destruction. He aimed for disruption. He selected a single outer ship from the alien formation. It was slightly separated from the rest, likely handling communication relay or perimeter scanning. It was not the strongest ship in the fleet, but it was important enough to matter. He prepared the targeting sequence. His breathing slowed. For a few seconds, everything inside the cockpit felt unreal. The silence was heavier than before. Even the hum of the ship seemed distant. Then he activated the system. A focused energy pulse fired silently from his ship. It was fast, precise, and almost invisible in space. It traveled across the darkness in seconds, heading directly toward the chosen target. The alien ship did not react in time. The pulse struck its outer systems, not enough to destroy it, but enough to disable key sensors and disrupt its communication links. Inside the alien fleet, something changed instantly. The damaged ship began sending error signals. Its systems flickered. Its coordination with the rest of the fleet broke down. For the first time since the attack on the colony, something unexpected had happened. Confusion spread. The fleet slowed slightly. Their formation shifted. Other ships turned toward the damaged unit, trying to understand what had happened. Their perfect coordination broke for just a moment, and that moment was enough. The captain watched carefully. He didn't celebrate. He didn't move. He simply observed. The alien fleet was now reacting emotionally for the first time. Not fear exactly, but confusion, uncertainty. Their systems were trying to locate the source of the attack, but there was nothing obvious to detect. The captain had already moved his ship slightly, using the asteroid field nearby as cover. The pulse had been fired from a hidden angle, designed to look like a random space anomaly or debris interference. To the alien sensors, it would not be easy to trace. But still, he knew they would try. He waited. Minutes passed. The alien fleet began scanning aggressively. Their formation tightened again, but now it was different, less smooth, less confident. The damaged ship was pulled back into the group for repair and analysis. They had felt something they did not expect, something they could not explain immediately. The captain understood what he had done. It was not a victory, not even close. It was a message, a signal that they were not alone in this space. For the first time, the hunter had been noticed, but not identified. That mattered. He stayed completely silent, letting the ship drift slightly farther into the shadow of the asteroid field. His systems remained on minimal output, reducing any possible trace. Every movement was controlled. Every action careful. The alien fleet spent time analyzing the attack zone. Energy scans expanded. Search patterns widened. They tried to reconstruct what had happened, but space was large, and the signal was too small. Eventually, their attention shifted again. They resumed their formation. Slowly, carefully, But now something had changed in them. The captain could see it in the way they moved. They were no longer fully relaxed. Their spacing was tighter. Their scanning frequency increased. Even their movement speed adjusted slightly. They were still powerful, still dangerous. But now, they were aware that something unknown existed nearby. The captain leaned back slowly in his seat. His ship remained hidden. He looked at the data again. One successful strike, small damage, limited impact, but strategically important because it proved something. They were not untouchable. He had not defeated them. He had not even truly harmed them in a meaningful way. But he had interrupted them. For the first time, their perfect system had failed to remain perfect. That was enough for now. He studied their response patterns carefully. How long it took them to recover, how they redistributed attention, how they prioritized damaged units. Every reaction gave him more information. This was not just a fight anymore. It was learning, understanding how they thought, how they reacted, how they adapted. He noticed something else too. They were cautious now, not afraid, but alert. There was a difference. Fear slows systems down. Caution sharpens them. He understood that this would make future attacks harder, but it also confirmed something important. They could be affected. They were not beyond reach. The captain kept his ship in position, watching as the fleet slowly stabilized again. Their formation returned to structure, but it was no longer as relaxed as before. Something had shifted, not enough to stop them, but enough to change them. And somewhere deep in the captain's mind, a new path was forming. Not just survival, not just observation, but preparation, because now he knew the truth. One strike's possible, and if one was possible, then more could follow. After the first strike, everything in space changed for the captain. He was still hidden inside the asteroid field, his ship running in near silence, but now the situation was no longer the same. Before, he was simply tracking the alien fleet, learning their patterns and understanding their movement. But now, something had shifted. The enemy had been touched. Even if it was a small impact, it meant they were no longer invisible in their own confidence. The alien fleet had tightened its formation after the attack. Their ships now moved closer together, scanning more aggressively, reacting faster to small disturbances in space. They were no longer drifting in relaxed coordination. Now, they were alert, focused, searching. But they still could not find him. The captain watched everything carefully from his hidden position. His ship stayed completely still, blending with the dark rocks of the asteroid field. Every system was minimized. No unnecessary energy, no visible signals, just silence and patience. He could feel the change in the enemy. They were not confused anymore like before. Now they were careful, more organized. Their scanning patterns had increased, and their movement was slower, more controlled. They were trying to avoid surprises, but that caution also created something new. A gap in speed. A gap in flexibility. The captain noticed it almost immediately. When a powerful system becomes cautious, it often sacrifices speed for safety. And that meant opportunities were still there, just harder to see. He studied them again, going over every movement they made. The damaged ship he had hit earlier was now being protected inside the formation. Other ships surrounded it, almost shielding it while it tried to recover. That small detail told him something important. Even in their advanced system, damage created priority shifts. They protected weak points. That was a pattern, and patterns could be used. The captain leaned forward slightly, eyes fixed on the screen. The data stream showed the fleet slowly moving away from the attack zone. They were not staying. They had finished whatever regrouping they were doing and were now continuing their journey. But something had changed in their behavior. They were no longer moving in a straight, confident formation. Now they adjusted constantly. They scanned more often. They reacted to every minor disturbance in space. It was like they were expecting another attack at any moment. The captain understood what he had done. He had not broken them, but he had forced them to think. And thinking slowed systems that were used to absolute control. He stayed hidden as the fleet began to move further away. His ship followed at a safe distance, carefully adjusting its position to remain within sensor limits but outside detection range. The silence inside the cockpit felt heavier now. Not peaceful, but tense, like something waiting to happen. Hours passed. The fleet moved through empty space, occasionally passing small asteroid clusters and debris fields. The captain tracked everything. their speed, their formation shifts, their response timing. He was not just watching anymore. He was planning. Slowly, an idea began forming in his mind. Not a direct attack, not a full confrontation, something smaller, more controlled, something that could weaken them step by step. He remembered the first strike, how one damaged ship had created confusion, how even a small disruption had forced them to react differently. That meant something very important. Their strength depended on stability. If stability was broken repeatedly, their system would start to lose efficiency. Not immediately, but gradually. And that was enough. The captain checked his ship's remaining energy and systems. Everything was still functional, but limited. He could not afford many engagements. Each action had to matter. He scanned the fleet again. There were dozens of ships, too many for a direct fight. But not all of them were equally important. Some handled coordination, some handled scanning, some handled movement control, and some were just support units. He started identifying them, separating roles, mapping importance levels, like building a structure in his mind. As he did this, the alien fleet suddenly shifted again. They changed direction slightly, not dramatically, but enough to notice. The captain narrowed his eyes. This was not random. They were adjusting their path toward a new region of space, a possible destination. He pulled up star maps and cross-checked their trajectory. A new system appeared in their projected path. It was not a major colony, but it was inhabited. Smaller human presence, a mining station, and a few small outposts. His chest tightened slightly as he realized it. They were not finished. The colony he had seen destroyed was not the end. It was just one step. He leaned forward again, his focus sharpening even more. Now it was no longer about studying what had already happened. It was about preventing what was coming next. The alien fleet continued moving, unaware that they were being tracked so closely. Their caution remained, but their direction was stable again. They believed they had eliminated the threat behind them. They were wrong. The captain began adjusting his ship's position, carefully matching their trajectory but staying far enough behind to remain undetected. Every movement had to be precise. Even a small mistake could expose him. He studied their formation again. They were still cautious, still structured, but their attention was divided now. Some ships focused on scanning behind them. Others focused on forward movement. That division created inefficiency, and inefficiency created opportunity. The captain realized something important in that moment. He did not need to destroy them. Not yet. He only needed to slow them, interrupt them, keep them uncertain, because uncertainty would force them to make mistakes, and mistakes would open doors. The fleet moved deeper into unknown space. Stars shifted slowly around them. The captain followed silently, his mind fully focused now. Every detail mattered. Every movement, every change, every shift in their behavior was another piece of the puzzle. He was no longer reacting. He was learning how to control the flow of the encounter. And somewhere in that cold silence of space, the balance had already started to shift. Not toward victory. Not yet. But toward something dangerous. Something the alien fleet had not expected. A human ship that refused to leave. The alien fleet moved deeper into space, unaware that they were no longer alone in the way they believed. Behind them, hidden in the darkness, the human ship continued to follow. Silent, patient, almost invisible among the drifting dust and scattered asteroids. But now things were different. The captain was no longer just observing, he was preparing. Hours of tracking had turned into understanding. Understanding had turned into planning, and planning was now turning into action. Not a large attack, not a direct battle, but something far more controlled and precise. He had studied the fleet long enough to know their behavior. He knew how they reacted under pressure. He knew how they protected damaged ships. He knew how they shifted formation when they sensed danger. And more importantly, he knew what made them unstable. They relied on order, structure, perfect coordination. If that order broke, even slightly, their system became slower, less efficient. That was the weakness he had been waiting for. The fleet was now approaching a new region of space. Far ahead, faint signals showed human presence. Small outposts, mining stations, not a colony like the one before, but still human lives, still people who would not survive an attack. The captain watched the data silently. This time, there was no hesitation in his mind. He could not allow another destruction. But he also knew something else. A direct confrontation would fail. His ship was still alone, still outmatched, still not powerful enough to destroy an entire fleet. So instead, he chose something else. He decided to break them from the inside. He studied the formation carefully again. The alien fleet was moving in a tight structure, but not perfectly balanced anymore. After his earlier interference, they had become cautious. That caution had made them predictable in a new way. They were scanning too much, reacting too often, splitting attention between threats and movement. That split was the opening. The captain selected a target. Not the strongest ship, not the command ship, but one of the coordination units that helped maintain fleet synchronization. If that ship failed again, the entire formation would feel it. He prepared the ship's systems. Energy was limited, so everything had to be precise. No wasted movement, no unnecessary power use, just one focused action. The human ship drifted slightly closer, still hidden. The asteroid field around them helped mask its presence. Space was large, but not empty enough to hide forever. Timing mattered more than distance now. The alien fleet continued forward, unaware of the exact danger approaching. Inside the cockpit, the captain stayed completely still for a few seconds, his eyes locked on the target ship. The system confirmed alignment. The trajectory was perfect. This was the moment. He fired. A focused disruption pulse shot through space, faster than visible light in practical sense. It traveled silently, without sound, without warning. And it hit. The targeted alien ship flickered instantly. Its systems destabilized for a moment. Not destroyed. Not even heavily damaged, but disrupted enough to break its coordination link with the rest of the fleet. And that was enough. Inside the alien formation, confusion spread. One of their coordination nodes had gone offline again. It was not a complete failure, but it was unexpected. It broke timing across multiple ships. Their synchronized movements stuttered for a fraction of a second. And in space warfare, even a fraction mattered. The fleet reacted immediately. Ships adjusted positions. Scanning intensity increased. Formation tightened again, but this time it was less smooth, more reactive, less confident. The captain watched closely. He saw it clearly now. They were starting to lose their rhythm. Not fully, not yet, but cracks were forming. He did not stay to observe the full reaction. He already knew what would happen. The fleet would try to stabilize again, isolate the damaged unit, and continue forward. They were too disciplined to collapse easily. But now they were no longer perfect. He moved his ship again, slipping back into deeper shadow. Each action he took now was carefully planned. No random movement. Everything had purpose. The fleet continued on toward the human outposts. The captain followed. But now his mind was fully locked into something different. This was no longer just about tracking. It was no longer just about revenge for one destroyed colony. It had become something larger, something heavier, because he now understood what he was dealing with. This fleet was not a one-time threat. It was part of a pattern, a system of destruction moving through human space. And if it was not stopped, it would keep going. The captain looked at the projected path again. The mining station and small outposts were still ahead. They had no idea what was coming. No warning, no defense strong enough to handle what was approaching. He tightened his grip slightly on the controls. His ship was still small, still alone, still not enough to fight directly. But now he had something else, knowledge. He knew how they moved. He knew how they reacted. He knew how they broke under pressure. And now, he also knew something more important. They could be disrupted. Not destroyed easily, but disrupted enough to change their path. The fleet shifted again slightly as they recovered from the second interference. Their formation was tighter now, more defensive than before. They were actively trying to prevent any further surprise attacks, but that defensive behavior slowed them, made them predictable. The captain studied that carefully. He was learning their limits now, not just their strengths, their limits. The human ship stayed behind them, hidden and quiet, as the alien fleet moved closer to the next human system. And now the captain had to make a decision. Follow and continue disruption, or prepare for something larger. His eyes stayed on the screen for a long time. Then he made his choice. He would not let them reach that system unchanged. Not this time. Not while he was still here. The ship adjusted its course slightly again, falling into position for whatever came next. Behind him, the destroyed colony was still a memory. Ahead of him, another was at risk. But now, the hunter had learned how to fight back. and the alien fleet, for the first time, was moving forward without knowing how closely it was being watched.